Canada's National Police Force is undergoing a dangerous transformation. It is shifting from an institution that upholds the law to one that enforces progressive ideology. That change was evident in a July 8th CBC interview with RCMP Staff Sergeant Camille Habel, a trained communications officer.
If someone you know was very believed in equal gender rights, but all of a sudden are leaning towards like traditional values, and that might be a sign that they're becoming more extremist.
This wasn't a casual remark or personal opinion. Communications officers don't freelance. They speak for the institution. That makes her words more than commentary. They're policy signals. Habel didn't define gender rights or traditional values, but the meaning was clear. She was signaling an adherence to a modern doctrine, that gender is fluid, entirely self-declared, and must be affirmed through social or medical intervention, regardless of age or biology. By adopting such a view, the RCMP has stepped beyond impartiality. It is no longer enforcing the law. It is defending a belief system, and dissent from that system is increasingly treated as deviance. This logic mirrors the structure of religious apostasy. In radical belief systems, apostates, those who abandon the faith, are often considered more dangerous than outsiders. Non-believers might be persuaded, but a defector threatens internal cohesion and must be punished. Canada's institutional progressivism operates in much the same way. If you never accepted its dogma, you may be dismissed as uninformed. But if you once affirmed it and now question it, you are seen as unstable and potentially dangerous. Progressive ideology insists that history moves only forward, toward greater inclusion, affirmation, and fluidity. Any reversal is cast not as reconsideration, but regression. That's why the RCMP would never suggest that someone who once affirmed biological sex but now embraces the idea of 72 genders may be radicalizing. Even when such a shift contradicts biology and common sense, it is celebrated as progress. What matters is not the reasoning behind the change, but the ideological direction. Public safety is no longer about upholding neutral laws. It's about protecting an approved narrative. In place of open debate, we get slogans. Trans women are women. Children can consent to medical transition. Gender is a spectrum. These are not policy proposals. They are mantras. To question them is to risk scrutiny. And in Canada today, scrutiny can bring consequences. Parents who challenge their child's transition may lose custody. Medical professionals who question puberty blockers or irreversible surgeries face disciplinary action. Journalists, academics, and commentators who criticize gender orthodoxy are deplatformed, defunded, or publicly discredited. These are not isolated incidents. They reflect a growing institutional reflex to treat dissent not as disagreement, but as danger. After a backlash to Habel's comments, the RCMP offered a clarification. She didn't mean traditional values are illegal, they said, only that acting on extreme beliefs could be problematic. But that misses the point. The concern isn't what's criminal. It's what's being reframed as suspicious. Once a belief is coded as pre-radical, it becomes easier to monitor, isolate, and punish. That discretion now lies with institutions that have openly adopted ideological positions. Meanwhile, radical actions carried out in the name of progressivism, placing children on puberty blockers, approving surgeries for minors, silencing dissenting professionals, are tolerated, subsidized, and protected. These interventions are invasive, irreversible, and often life-altering. Yet institutions like the RCMP do not label any of this dangerous. That label is reserved for those who step away from orthodoxy. A citizen who quietly shifts from affirmation to doubt is flagged, not for what they've done, but for what they've stopped believing. That is the real offense, defection from the state-sanctioned worldview. This shift reveals something more troubling than a single interview. The RCMP, once expected to apply the law impartially, now behaves as an agent of ideological conformity. It is no longer neutral. It is no longer merely a law enforcement body. It is enforcing belief. We must take Habel's statement seriously, not because it was extreme, but because it was institutional. It shows how dissent is now handled, not through discussion, but through suspicion. Where disagreement was once normal in a democratic society, it is now recast as instability. Freedom of belief doesn't vanish in a single moment. It is reframed as extremism, then gradually excluded from legitimacy. We've seen this before, in theocratic regimes, authoritarian states, and ideological cults. Now we are watching it happen in Canada, and the RCMP is enforcing it.